Welcome back to the Big Bout Podcast. John Suntress here. A couple days removed from an epic third fight between Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. I am happy to welcome a boxing promoter from Chicago and a guy that was in the camp of, shame on me. Now I'm blanking. Shame on me, man. The Gator, Craig Bojanowski, the fine cruiserweight contender and one-time title challenger. But Don Lenza joins us. Welcome, Don.
Hello, John. How are you?
I am excellent. Good of you to join me. I had to think for a couple days, Don, after watching Saturday, because I will admit, initially, did not want to give a lot of credit to Deontay Wilder, but I watched the fight a second time. Shame on me, because you can't question his determination and heart as far as wanting to continue, and frankly, still being dangerous up until the knockout.
Well, leading up to the fight, I got caught up in the hype, as I always do for big fights. And I wanted to see the heavyweight championship of the world. Sure. We've been watching that fight our whole lives. Nothing's more important than the heavyweights. So I wanted to see it. And we saw it, and It was unbelievable. But having said that, I was with you. I don't think Tyson Fury is Muhammad Ali. I didn't want to give Deontay Wilder all the credit in the world for being the toughest guy ever. So I tempered myself in my thinking after the fight. But strangely enough, today, you said you were a couple days removed from it. Today, I heard a quote from Mike Tyson, who said something along the lines of, what a great heavyweight fight it was. And he said, not in terms of skill, but the event, but the two fighters fighting each other. And that's what it was. It was a really good fight.
Yes.
Between two guys who probably aren't, I don't know either of them are top 10 heavyweights ever. No matter what happens, I don't think they'll ever be top 10 heavyweights.
Okay. That's your thought? Okay.
It might be a top 10 heavyweight fight, and I wouldn't even push it that far, but I don't think either one of them will ever be considered top 10 heavyweight champions.
Well, the one thing I will say is, much like Marciano in the 50s, you can't help your division. And really, in the case of Marciano, obviously, you still had Charles and Walcott. So that certainly helped. And I'd even throw in the Archie Moore fight as far as fighting great fighters. But all that said, I do think Tyson Fury has proven that he is, for his era, a very, very good, if not great, heavyweight champion. From beating Klitschko, from the cutie pie annoying performance of beating Vladimir Klitschko and basically playing peekaboo with him for 12 rounds. I got to give him credit, man. He has really used those two fights afterwards, before the first Wilder fight, to get his timing back. The first Wilder fight, again, a little too much cutesy pie stuff for my taste, but to get up from both of those knockdowns, and certainly the 12th round was epic. And you can't deny Deontay Wilder's power. His skill is nothing, and it still is nothing. But you can't deny his power. And then for Fury to destroy Wilder in the second fight the way he did, he has just shown that he is a master boxer, which, again, even back to Klitschko, he always was in terms of feints, but I didn't like his pity-pat punching. He obviously has upped his game since then. And this fight, like you said, not a lot of skill from either guy, but a lot of grit and determination. And frankly, I was saying that this could very easily be a giant-size Hagler-Hearns. And I think that's what we got. And actually, in fairness, Hearns and Hagler showed much more skill in their 3 rounds. But I just mean that one guy was going to try and bomb, and in response, the other guy was going to bomb and try it, each guy trying to knock each other out. That's all Wilder could do because he has no other skills. But I give Fury credit. And again, it was the best fight I've seen since Joshua fought Klitschko, and they were both down. And I think it was better than that fight. And we've been very fortunate, I think, in the last 6 or 7 years to have 2 high-quality heavyweight title fights like Klitschko and Joshua. And also the third one that we'll talk about in a minute, Usyk and Joshua. And now Fury Wilder 3.
Yeah, you actually thought the comparison might happen between Hagler Hearns in this fight before the fight?
Yes, sir.
Wow, that's I wouldn't have thought. I wouldn't have seen both these guys coming together the way they did.
Really?
I didn't see it. I thought one would impose his will fairly quickly on the other one, and then it might take the whole fight, but one guy would be dominant. I didn't see a back and forth. That's what made the fight so good for me.
Well,
I wasn't ready for that.
Well, because again, Wilder going into this fight, I heard Teddy Atlas on his podcast, and I so agreed with him. Where beyond erasing the loss, he could live. I mean, as much as he complained, the first fight being a draw, but to avenge the loss, not only that, but I really think Deontay Wilder was fighting knowing that hardcore boxing fans looked at his record, looked at the guys he fought, and yes, 41 knockouts is really impressive. But when you go down the list, not a lot of names on there. You got Luis Ortiz. I guess you got Stavern. I guess you got, a couple others. But frankly, these are not all-stars. And yes, they're the only guys that were out there other than Joshua and Klitschko. But I'm like, I never have been impressed with Deontay Wilder's opponents. And he's a 21st century Mac Foster or Alex Stewart in terms of, that's a lot of knockouts. Who'd you beat? Not impressed.
Well, when he beat Stavern, I thought that was a big deal. I remember thinking that at the time, but that seems like a long time ago.
It was
to hang your hat on that.
Yeah. No, it was a long time ago. Yeah. But yeah, so that's why that, and again, all he has is that right hand. All he has is the atomic bomb. So you knew he was going to use it. And again, Fury had already proven that he can take Wilder's best shots and destroy him, as he did in that second fight. And that's why I'm like, I put myself in Fury's head, and it's like, yeah, let this guy try and bomb me. I'll bomb right back, man. And also, I don't know how much COVID took out of Tyson Fury. There are even those who don't believe he really had COVID, and maybe he was just out of shape or whatever. When he weighed in at 277, I'm like, all right, that's not a lot more than he's been before, but it did kind of make me go, what kind of camp did he have?
Well, it's got to make you worried. It's got to make you worried when you see a guy at 277. Ever since Buster Douglas went up in weight.
242 or whatever against Holyfield. But I mean, that's the thing is Fury's 6'9", man. And I've accepted the fact that he's going to have that roll around his waist no matter what.
Well, yeah, I mean, guys, certain guy. Not everybody looks like Mike Tyson, Not everybody. Not everybody.
Or Deontay Wilder.
Or Deontay Wilder, for that matter, who looked spectacular.
Sure.
Was in better shape. Because I'll tell you what, even though he's, all he's got is that right hand, he worked in this fight. He tried. He was more. I thought he was more mobile and more agile because he had to be. Because for being a very big man, Tyson Fury, you better be on your guard. You better have your full game. because he did a great job, just like Wilder did a great job coming out and trying to start with the body, actually having a plan.
Yep.
Fury also had a plan to use that size, and he leaned on him. It was awful.
Hey, man, that's the game.
On earth to be in there with that guy.
But that's the game, Don. I mean,
sure.
He's already shown that in several other fights, including the second Wilder fight, where he leans on you. He it's like a building parking itself on you, and it's like
I've seen him show that, but I've never seen him do it that well. Man, for a big, heavy guy to be in that kind of shape, I didn't see him breathing heavy.
No, in fact, he was bouncing on his toes like 8, 9, and 10, along with 11 coming out of the corner. And man, no, that's the thing. He is a master boxer. I would love to hear Muhammad Ali talk about Tyson Fury and the way he moves, because he moves incredibly well for being a skyscraper.
Yeah. That's an accurate description. A movie skyscraper.
Exactly. And man. But as much as Wilder showed a game plan early on, I think once he was knocked down, even after the 2 knockdowns in the fourth, he got tired real fast. I'm hearing that he doesn't like road work. Well, boo-hoo, jerk, because you need stamina. And this guy has shown a lack of stamina. And again, that's why I go back to the record and go, thank God he knocked most of those guys out and only went the distance with Stavern. And, I'm like, he's proven if he wants to continue, and he's going to turn 36 in a week or two, there's a lot of exposure of Deontay Wilder, no matter who he fights next. And a lot of people that might have been afraid of that right hand now have 2 great fights to look at for a blueprint and go. And I'm not saying they can lean on him the way Tyson Fury can, but I love Alexander Usyk's chances against Deontay Wilder. I think a Wilder Joshua fight is a very interesting puzzle that I still can't pick a winner. I would kind of lean to Wilder from a power standpoint because I think Joshua's chin is in question. We'll get to Joshua and Usyk in a minute. But no, as far as Tyson Fury goes, he's the best out there. He's beaten the best. I don't think he has, he obviously is going to continue. And I hope we'll see about either Dylan White or Otto Wallin too. But again, this was a great, go ahead.
This might be the problem that I cause. I have a genuine issue with Wilder continuing forward. He took a beating. The physical toll that this fight took on him makes me question whether he'll ever be able to do that again.
I understand.
I believe every fighter has a finite shelf life, and seeing the way he got busted up in this fight, I did not see a picture of him since the fight.
No.
But I've seen enough fighters the day after a fight to genuinely know that this man is not in good shape right now. Walking around, he's still feeling that badly. And you don't recover from that. You never recover from it. Every fighter has a finite number of punches that he can take, and we have seen the best of Deontay Wilder in these 3 fights. Now, I really question. I don't know if you heard about it, but Malik Scott after the fight, as the new brain trust in that corner,
Yeah.
says that he's just starting. Wilder's just starting to learn the shorthand of them working together.
Yes, I saw that too.
And he'll get better at this. He'll get better at what I've taught him, and he did very well in this fight. I disagree. I think that while he may understand what his trainer tells him better, because of the physical toll of this fight and the other two fights as well, that we've probably seen the best of him, and it's going to be easier for future opponents. It's going to be every fight's going to be a war for him now. He may knock somebody out, but he's going to have to knock them out. Otherwise, they're going to come. They're going to come at him hard, and nobody needs that. It's a hell of a way to make a living.
I agree with everything you're saying.
You made $25 million in this fight, and you're going to make 15 for your next fight.
Oh, if he's lucky to make it, he could. I mean, and this is ridiculous that we're talking like this. It might only be $5 million. Yeah, I don't know that.
It very well could be.
You know, it depends on who. If he wants to continue, B, who they match him with, and C, I agree with everything you said. Listen, Malik Scott had a great game plan. I just think that at 35, it was going to be tough for Wilder to implement that consistently, because once he got his bell rung, he was back to being Deontay Wilder 1.0. And
that's what you have to do with a fight. You have to get a fighter. The trainer can't turn him into Deontay Wilder 2.0. You have to take Deontay Wilder 1.0 and make him the best 1.0 he can be.
Well, or like an Emmanuel Stewart, refine. I mean, obviously, and you can even say that about Sugar. Fury's trainer, because I know he's Emmanuel's nephew and everything. But I think all the reclamation jobs that Emmanuel Stewart used to do with Lennox Lewis and Vladimir Klitschko, and among the others that he was able to kind of refine. I forget the great light heavyweight that he took, Jeff Harding. Not Jeff Harding, the guy Jeff Harding fought. I can't think of his name, the black gentleman. That Hearns got his light heavyweight title from. And then and then Emmanuel took over his training after the two Jeff Harding.
Dennis Andres?
It was Dennis Andres. Very good. Thank you, buddy. Yes.
Wow.
He became a Kronk fighter. And Emmanuel refined his style, and Andres won back the light heavyweight belt after losing it to Hearns and everything. But I think that he got those guys at the right age, and that they have all been better boxers than where Wilder started. And I just think you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I really believe that. And I think Wilder at 34, 35, getting Malik part of the team and stuff with the best intentions. And maybe if Wilder does want to continue, again, I trust Malik Sai. Also, I know he wants a job and believes in the job that he can do with Wilder. Fine, I'm shrugging. Why not? But I just think you're right that Wilder's bell's been rung enough that the next fights will be struggles, and that every talented heavyweight has a blueprint of how to beat this guy.
Well, and since we're talking about trainers, you go backward one trainer to Mark Breland, and whether you agree or disagree with the fact that Mark was a scapegoat after the fight and stopped a fight that should have been stopped, you got to have a guy in your corner who will stop a fight, who will operate in your best interest.
Yes.
Nobody's ever questioned Eddie Futch for stopping, for telling Joe, no, Joe, that's enough, buddy.
In the Thriller. Yeah, in the Thriller Manila. Absolutely, man.
Angelo Dundee, I don't think ever would stop a fight on Muhammad, and I don't think he did.
Actually, he did, Don. The Larry Holmes fight.
Did he stop the fight?
Oh my God, man. Richard Christmas goes in Ali's corner, and you hear Angelo going, "That's it, ball game's over." And Bodini Brown is going, "No, no, no." And Angelo screams, "F you." And he goes, "I'm the chief second." And he goes to Christmas and he goes, "I'm the chief second. I'm stopping this fight."
As you say it, I remember it.
And yeah, it was amazing. And again, because he cared enough about, Ali's getting his ass handed to him. The marks, it was ridiculous. And even poor Larry was looking at Christmas going, "How much more do I have to hit this guy? Stop this fight."
Right. And that's an unbelievable example right there.
Yeah.
But I would have bet that Ange and I say Ange because as you know, I knew Angelo.
Oh yeah.
I got to meet Angelo several times, and then he worked with us. My dad managed a fighter named Georgie Navarro that fought for the featherweight title, and Angelo trained him for a couple of fights. I got to spend a lot of time talking to Angelo Dundee, and he was unbelievable. And he and Ali had a genuine shorthand where I know Ali would probably never quit a fight. But I bet you Angelo talked to him about it before he stopped it and tried to talk him into it. And it doesn't surprise me that he would step up for his fighter, but I know it probably that whole situation had to be heartbreaking.
I don't think Angelo was in his corner for the Berbick fight after the Holmes fight.
I don't know. I honestly don't remember.
Yeah, it's the fight's available. It's on YouTube, but I almost can't bring myself to watch it because it's so sad.
I found all that stuff heartbreaking. One of the things everything I've done in the boxing business, and I'm not involved in the training of fighters and anything like that. But as my dad, I take my cues from my dad used to manage fighters. If there was no upside to a guy climbing into the ring anymore, there's no reason to let him fight anymore. There's no amount of money that makes it worth a guy take the beating that Deontay Wilder took the other night. So, when you see a guy like that, even if it's Muhammad Ali, case in point, Evander Holyfield in that nonsense fight that just happened recently.
Yeah.
That's an awful thing to see.
Yeah.
It was just a guy that couldn't fight anymore. And he shouldn't be able to fight anymore. He's 58 years old.
You're right.
But he couldn't fight anymore.
Well,
and
also,
you never see that.
Honestly, Don, I am glad to be lurking on the periphery with my current run of boxing podcasts. I don't think I could have a civil conversation with the people at Triller who promoted that. California denied the fight. They go to Florida where it's Florida. Sorry, Florida. That's just the way it is right now. And also just the murkiness of, was it an exhibition or was it a legitimate fight? Everything about that thing was so wrong. And also just Evander stepping in to replace De La Hoya. It was just wrong. It was just wrong on every level. And really, I went from admiring Triller's ambition of putting together that Tyson Roy Jones exhibition that Tyson took very seriously, but held back. And Roy was gasping for life in that fight.
Oof.
Yeah, and I'm glad, seriously, I'm glad you said oof too, because you talk to Roy now, and he really has forgotten. He's in serious denial. Although it's pretty obvious that he'll never do it again. He was on DAZN. It was either the Liverpool card or it was the Joshua. I think it was actually the Joshua Usyk card where Roy was out in London helping train one of the guys on the card. And yeah, they're like, "Oh, would you do it again?" Well, I don't know. I'd have to weigh my options. And so no is the answer because like I said, he was gassed after the first round. So again,
just to go full circle with a bunch of stuff here.
Go for it.
My first experience with Roy Jones, I mean, I knew he was an Olympian, but shortly after that, one of the fighters I promoted, Ron Amundsen, fought Roy Jones in his third professional fight.
I remember.
So I get to go to beautiful Florida, where I'm standing with names of guys that can't tell this story now, so I get to tell it. I'm with Eddie Futch, who's got a fighter on the show. And I'm with Lou Duva, who's got a featherweight named Ed Hobson on the show.
Funny, I remember all these names. Go on.
And Ronnie is a maniac. Ronnie Amundsen, he could have lived in the gym. He would have been just as happy as anybody else. I woke up in the middle of the night to find him jumping rope in his room. I heard something in the adjoining room and I looked and he's jumping rope in the middle of the night just because he couldn't sleep. And the fight was scheduled at 158. I weigh Ronnie in that morning at 158. We go across to the weigh-in. He steps on the Florida Commission scales at 151 3/4. Everybody is 6 1/4 pounds heavy or light, except for Roy Jones, who weighs in at 158. And I pitched a fit, and this was a same day weigh-in. We weighed in at 9 o'clock in the morning. We fought on NBC at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I went nuts. I went crazy. And you can't get anywhere with the State Athletic Commission. I'm not going to cancel the fight. It's a chance to fight a guy that's only got 3 fights. Ronnie Amundsen was not a big puncher, but he fought Roy Jones for 7 rounds. And that was the longest anybody went with Roy until Roy was a top 10 contender. He just tore through everybody else except Ronnie. He beat Ronnie. He beat him handily. But he also had a nice hedge. He had the State Athletic Commission working for him.
Right, man. You know, we were talking off the air, and the Joshua Usyk fight, and we'll get into detail on that in it still, because I want to talk about. Well, actually, this might be the opportunity. I mean, is there anything else we could say about Wilder and Fury 3? We're going to look at Dylan White and Otto Wallin coming up at the end of the month, and I do want to look at the end part of the contenders and where everybody is right now in the top 10 for the heavyweights, and I'll bring up a list so we know what we're talking about. But I felt with the Usyk Joshua fight, I'm like, man, Usyk is in Joshua's home country. It's a Joshua promotion. It's not that the fights are fixed, but the dice are certainly loaded on one. The scales, dip on one side by about 6 pounds, apparently, if you're Roy Jones. So yeah, when you run into those kind of things, it's like you really got to beat the guy to get a great nod. And in fact, even on the Usyk scorecards with Joshua, the British judge had it 115, 113. No fucking way did Anthony Joshua win 5 rounds of that fight. I'm sorry. No way.
It's a hell of a thing. The B side of what I was talking about was later bringing up Roy Jones.
Yeah.
You go forward, Roy Jones and Mike Tyson fight. They're gonna that's a disaster waiting to happen.
Yep.
It's a good thing they both got through it. And you said Roy was gassed. Tyson looked great for an old guy. but he's an old guy.
100%.
I didn't like any of these promotions to begin with. So the fact that Triller's on the way out is a good thing, in my opinion.
I agree with you, man.
I don't need to see people play boxing, quote unquote. Doing the air quotes here.
Yep. You're right. You don't play boxing. That's the one sport you don't play.
When you bring it to a real fight, like Joshua and Usyk, and all of a sudden everything's on Joshua's side of the scale.
Yep.
And if you're a promoter, your job is to make sure you've got two good fighters and you're going to keep two good fighters because one of them's going to win and you want to have the winner. If you're a manager, your job is to do everything so everything breaks for your fighter. So when you've got Joshua and Usyk, it's a Joshua promotion. Usyk's not going to get too many breaks. But at the end of the day, fights aren't fixed. Okay? They're real. And a guy can still win a fight.
Right.
And that's exactly what happened. He had to fight a really good fighter. Joshua was supposed to be, okay, he wins this one, he gets the winner. Yeah, except that's why all these contracts have rematch clauses in them, and everything, because it's a real sporting event. It's not Triller. It's not exhibitions. It's not Dana White setting up whoever he wants to have his fighter fight in MMA. The fights still have real outcomes, but everything's not completely loaded toward one guy. It might be, it's not a balanced scale, but everything's not heaped upon one guy because that's the guy that makes the money.
Well, but we've seen some lousy decisions that you can look at sideways and go, all right, something's going on. And even, again, Teddy Atlas is a guy that's like, look, I'm not saying fights are fixed, but like I said, it seems like the dice are loaded in one guy's favor much more than an opponent. And that, all that said, but Usyk, thankfully, is that kind of caliber fighter. But you would have thought that Joshua, going into the fight, even after the Andy Ruiz loss, would kind of do a poor man's version of Fury and use his size more, crowd him, lead him, be more aggressive. But when Usyk comes out in round one and pops those combinations in Anthony Joshua's face, I either saw it, and I've already talked about this with Doug Fisher from the editor-in-chief of Ring on one of my last shows. I'm like, either he was scared or beyond confused, because all of a sudden he got much more worried about getting hit than hitting him, than throwing punches. And it also makes me very suspicious of Joshua's chin if you put together all the times with Ruiz and Klitschko that he's been down. And another final thing about a fight being in the house being for one fighter over the other, the bell in the 12th round of Joshua and Usyk rang a good 6 seconds before the time it was supposed to. And that's when Joshua was on the ropes and easily could have gone down.
Well, one of the things, like I said, boxers, trainers, managers, everybody's got an agenda. Okay. You got a team behind you that supposedly does the right thing. One of the genuine confusions in boxing that's always destroyed me, even as a promoter, is the guy who's paying the commission, the guy who pays the judges' purses, is the guy who has the fighter's interest, is trying to protect the fighter's interest. I don't get to pick the judges that score my fighter's fight, but I do pay them.
Well,
so
go on.
If the judge wants to make that big heavyweight championship of the world money again. Is there a little bias on his part that he wants to keep the promoter happy?
Exactly.
It's not obvious, but it's questioned. I always question it. And I'll tell you what, I've complained that a judge hasn't treated me fairly. I said, I paid that damn guy and he picked the other fighter. So, it's just the way it works. It's a questionable setup. It's a questionable arrangement to begin with. What you said about Joshua, I don't care what the difference in their weight is or if he's fighting a middleweight. Stanley Ketchel knocked down Jack Johnson.
Sure.
These guys are professionals. They throw a punch. It's not like when you got into a fight with a little guy on the street and the little guy hit you and it didn't hurt. The guy that's small in this fight has been trained to hit people and hurt them for years.
Yeah.
So Usyk, he's a cruiserweight. He's nothing. Yeah, you don't want to get hit by him. That's and Joshua found that out.
Totally.
I'm the guy who says, yeah, he can't punch. Okay, look, he's got no knockouts or anything. But when you see a guy that doesn't have great knockouts stick somebody with a really good jab, he knows how to throw a punch. And that will change the way anybody else acts when you hit him with a good shot.
No, I agree with you, man. Absolutely. And again, that's why the day of the fight, I was telling you off the air, I predicted Ugas against Pacquiao, and then for Fury, or rather Usyk and Joshua, I really didn't make up my mind up until the morning of the fight. And what I couldn't get out of my head was Usyk's talent and the fact that he managed to literally clean out that cruiserweight division, become an undisputed champion, fought a lot of talented people like Tony Bellew, who, is the champ in the first Creed movie. People probably, fight fans certainly know Tony and everything, but, the general public. But I think Bellew, even though he was like 34, 35, very talented fighter, ran out of gas just because he's an old man, I think, against Usyk. And that win really impressed me. His two heavyweight fights didn't impress me. But again, I just couldn't get his cruiserweight performances out of my mind. And I'm like, Ruiz is a good two-handed heavyweight fighter. And he gave Joshua fits in that first fight. I'm like, I could see an upset happening here. Joshua should win, but I just couldn't get it out of my mind. And I looked at the odds and I'm like, all right, what the hell? And I never bet the farm, but I put $50 on Usyk and won back $160. So I made $110 on the bet. And I was thrilled. But also it was really great to see a master boxer perform against a big man like that. And God, now obviously you look at the top 10 right now, and absolutely Alexander Usyk is the second best heavyweight out there, no question. And the only reason why I like Fury's chances, should they fight, I don't think it's going to happen, frankly, or if not, it won't happen for a while. But it's just that, again, Tyson Fury, unlike Anthony Joshua, knows how to fight a smaller man. And that skyscraper build of his will lean on him and negate Usyk's power. And we'll see what happens. But I will definitely pick the big man over the little man in that matchup.
Yeah, I think everybody else is an also ran to Tyson Fury now, right? Yes. But having said that, there's a lot of good heavyweights out there.
Absolutely agree.
I had told you off the air that my pick for the past year and a half was Adam Kovnatski, and just goes to shows I know how to pick him.
It's all right.
And walked into the first Hellenius fight raving to anybody that would listen how this kid is going to be the next heavyweight sensation. Never mind champion. Champion's locked up. He's going to be unbelievable. And I did that because he threw more punches than I'd ever seen heavyweight throw. And when he got hit, he had a good, solid chin from good, solid punchers. All of a sudden, in the Hellenius fight, he decided he needed to get hit by every one of those punches. And I'm watching him and I'm going, okay, we understand you can take a punch. That doesn't mean you gotta. And it didn't stop. Obviously, he lost that fight. And in this fight, I tell you, I wish Mark Breland had been Kovnatski's coach, because that fight should have been stopped. His eyes looked like he had 150 fights.
Yeah.
He didn't get hit. He didn't get hit with that many punches to make his face fall apart like that. That kid will never be right again. I'm saying the same thing about him. I'm saying about Wilder, but it happens to be the case.
Well, Kovnatski, go ahead, finish your thought.
No fighter should ever take a beating like that.
Well, I got to be honest, man, and most of it's based on the two Hellenius fights. I didn't understand this hype behind Kovnatski. I don't know what happens next because he is youngish.
He can't overcome that.
What's that?
He can't overcome that. He can't take the punches anymore.
Well, you might be right, man. But
you don't think Hellenius came out of nowhere and all of a sudden it punches like these other guys?
Well, no. But again, he did what he did in the first fight. It's a littler man, and took his shot and he got it. Doesn't it suck though that Robert Hellenius has these two performances and will likely go nowhere? Maybe he'll pick up one payday for an Andy Ruiz or a Luis Ortiz, who I still love, even though he's 65 years old.
He's got grandchildren.
Well, and that's okay. But he also is a southpaw with really fast hands. So
I love watching him fight.
Yeah, and I just think, listen, I so agree with you. The heavyweight division has not been this healthy since the mid 90s to late 90s in terms of legitimate contenders that could take the title and stuff. That said, I think Luis Ortiz is incredibly talented. That last fight was just kind of a weird, almost no contest loss. Or for not him, he won, but you know what I mean. And frankly, the two Wilder fights were competitive. Certainly the first fight and the second one, I thought he was outpointing Wilder until Wilder knocked him out in the second fight. So again, and Dylan White against Luis Ortiz, please make that match. Andy Ruiz against Luis Ortiz, please make that match.
Yeah, you could throw all those names in one hat, and whatever way it comes out, we'll be lining up to watch him.
And I think the reason why he's been inactive is nobody wants to touch him because he's a southpaw with fast hands and a match truck.
It's a problem, promoters. Don King taught all the promoters, you can sit on a heavyweight as long as you want. You don't be in such a great hurry to put him back in the ring because when he does fight, you're going to make enough money to feed everybody's family for several years. Do you want to take a couple $1 million fight against this guy when you could be the next guy to fight in these promotions where it's a base $5 million and the pay-per-view might be 20?
Right.
No,
I do. Well, that's Dylan White.
But I want to see them all fight tomorrow.
Well,
That's
but that's Dylan White.
Fans want to see them all fight now.
Well, again, I think Dylan White. I give Dylan White a lot of credit for being willing, and you got to say this about Joshua as well. They're willing to fight anybody, and I really think White is taking a big risk to fight Tyson Fury when Fury is properly rested and maybe would be available by early spring or like March or April, hopefully, for a next fight. This fight against Otto Wallin on the 30th, I've been telling you, I like Otto Wallin ever since he busted up Tyson Fury's eyes. And Fury was doing the same thing with him, using his weight, leaning on him, a lot of clinches and stuff, and doing what he had to eke out that points win. And it was, he won. I'm not saying Fury didn't win, but he had to fight his ass off to keep Wallin off of him. And all Wallin did was deepen those cuts over Fury's eyes. If it was, and went back again to when it's the house fighter fighting and the promoter has the house fighter. If that were any other place, and if it was on neutral territory and a neutral promoter and neutral country, they would have stopped that fight and Wallin would have won. Because
you're probably right with that one. Yeah. I was pretty impressed with Fury's ability to gut it out on a night where clearly he was having a bad night and the other guy was having a very good night.
Yep. Well, and even the Wilder fight, again, that's why it's the third fight was so great was, those were clean knockdowns in the fourth round. And Fury got up, and not only did Fury get up, but he fought well in the fifth round. And again, that's both guys, tons of determination. And that's why I went from hating Tyson Fury when he fought Klitschko to now it's like, all right, this guy is serious when his head's on right. He is a great boxer. He's got a tremendous amount of heart. He's got a good chin, and he's a very talented fighter, and he's got power. Pretty much the complete package. And just that will to win. Champs know how to win. That's another thing that Teddy Atlas was saying about, man, I'll tell you, I am so behind him, obviously, and following everything he says. But when he was doing the Usyk Joshua fight, he's like, champions know how to win. And that is so true in every sport. They could take it to another level when they need to, gut it out, and end up winning.
Well, I'm not crazy about Teddy Atlas's personality that he puts forth as a commentator, as a trainer, or as a knowledgeable boxing guy. You have to quote everything he says because he's very opinionated, but he's got the pedigree of being around so many sharp people and being such a sharp guy that if he says it, you don't have to agree with it, but you better respect it because it comes from knowledge. Well,
and if it'd make you feel better, he picked Wilder for the fight.
Well, and that fight, even though you got paid properly, that fight definitely looks like a pick'em fight now.
Oh yeah.
We keep saying we're going to move on to we're talking about other things, but Tyson Fury again, when he got dropped, his eyes were clear, but his legs were gone.
Yep. Yes.
and I said, okay, now Wilder got through that knockdown, but is Fury going to be able to? And that's why he got dropped twice. His legs were wrung. He wanted to keep fighting. He thought his legs were under him, and they left him.
I know what you mean. Yeah. No, you're right about that. And it had Wilder had another 30 seconds, he might have knocked him out.
And because I was talking to somebody as those knockdowns happened, he actually had a couple seconds more. Wilder had a couple seconds more to go after Fury than Fury had to go after him in the previous round. but
It
it
was-
seemed like
The referee was kind of weird.
eternity.
Yeah. Those 10 counts were a little weird. Yeah.
Not the knockdowns. The amount of time left in the round once they got up. Both guys had about the same amount of time, right around 30 seconds. But 30 seconds is a year and a half when a guy, either guy, when a guy that size is coming after you.
Oh yeah.
And you're not right.
No, absolutely. No, again, early on there were several places where potentially it could have stopped there. Absolutely. And again, this is why it's so interesting now to look at this heavyweight division and see what everybody's doing. You mentioned obviously you always have to have the rematch clause. Unfortunately, that means that we're going to see Joe Parker fight Chisora again. Now, it was a split decision the first time back in May, but I don't know a lot of people that really are rushing to see that fight. And I watched Joe Parker to see if there's ever going to be any improvement, and I've yet to see any. So that's
if anybody out of those and all the heavyweights, just like I said, these two guys had a great fight, but I don't think they're top 10 heavyweights. All these guys that we want to see fight each other. Yeah, okay, so you got to rank somebody 1 through 10, but they all seem like they're 5 through 15 or 5 through 20 heavyweights to me.
Yeah.
I don't see anybody that's really cream of the crop the way, I sound like the old guy now talking about the old days when, you had Ali, Frazier, Foreman, and Norton, but Parker and Chisora. Out of everybody, I'd like to throw one name back in the hat, just see if they can fight somebody else.
Yeah. Well,
but I'll take it.
Who's your 1 through 5?
I'm the guy that'll watch any two guys fight in the middle of the night on the Spanish channel. Even though my Spanish isn't that good, I'll figure it out.
Dude, are you kidding me? Now with streaming and DAZN and even ESPN Plus, it's like, hey, wake up at Friday morning at 7 a.m. to watch a title fight from Japan. Or this afternoon at 1 o'clock from Italy, we've got a full fight card. Hey, sounds great. Where do I sign?
There's only 9 fights on the show. Yeah,
that's all right. I want to ask you. Give me your top 5, 1 through 5 heavyweights right now.
Oh man.
Oh, that shouldn't be that hard.
Oh.
Well, I agree with it. Shame on me. I've got a list in front of me, and I pretty much agree with this list. And I'll even go further than 1 through 5. But they've got Fury at number 1, Usyk at number 2. Now they've got Wilder at 3, and then Joshua, and then Andy Ruiz. So that's your 1 through 5. They have Dylan White at 6, Joe Parker at 7, Ortiz at 8, Joe Joyce, who I'm still not convinced about, at 9, and Michael Hunter at 10.
And Hunter, I don't know well enough.
Neither do I, frankly.
But, just because of what happened, Wilder's going down. So is he still top 5? Because you got Fury Usyk. Joshua deserved to be, he's still strong.
Sure.
I love White. Even though, I don't know why him more than anybody else. And I am an Ortiz guy. I liked Kovnatski, but he's gone. Why Hellenius isn't in a top 10 list after being dominant on 2 large cards and supposedly against 2 strong contenders. Where's Wallin on the list?
Hold on. Well, he's not in the top 10 for this list. I know he is well ranked in the various belt organizations. Hold on one second. I'll tell you in a minute. But while I'm looking it
But I
up,
mean, for a guy that gave the heavyweight champion fits.
well, I agree, and that's why again, I think like Luis Ortiz, I think nobody wants to fight Wally, frankly, and that's why when Dylan White, by the way, I'm going by Eddie Hearn's words, his promoter, and I actually like Eddie Hearn, but also I don't trust anything the promoters say, so because they're hyping the gate. It is a tough fight though, Wallin and Dylan White, and also based on when Dylan White has had moments of losing his concentration and focus, and he's paid for it a couple times now, Povatkin and the like. That's why I think he better be razor focused, because I think Otto Wallin is a sharp enough boxer and puncher that could upset things. I'm watching those odds very carefully. And like I said, based on the surprise performance against Tyson Fury, I take Otto Wallin very seriously. Now, Hellenius, though, 37. And like I was saying, I think at best, an Andy Ruiz, a Deontay Wilder, somebody like that. If Wilder decided to want to still fight, Hellenius will be there to be somebody's opponent. But at 37, and really only being right now the champion of Kanachki, I'm not. I don't see a lot of upside there for a promoter or for the fighter, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, everybody on the short list are interchangeable. Okay, a promoter will definitely hype his guy, but at the end of the day, I think the thing that the thing that brings them all together is popular opinion. It doesn't often dictate who the two fighters that wind up getting matched. But at the end of the day, the promoter wants to get paid. So, I mean, people were talking about a fourth fight. It ain't gonna happen.
No way.
But
Fury doesn't need it.
No, and I think he should really fight right after the holidays, as soon as they'll put it together. Probably 6 months, like you said. But he should fight me. He should fight the easiest fight he can get and get paid.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, and also, I mean, he's pretty adamant in the post-fight press conference that I'm not even thinking about boxing. I'm not even thinking about what's next. I'm going to rest. And yeah, well, good for him. He earned it.
He deserves it after this. 100%. You and I have done a fabulous job not mentioning the fact that we're all living during these awful times of the pandemic and COVID, because everybody has to say it in every interview, no matter what you're talking about. If you're talking about how you going out and getting toilet paper or the heavyweight championship of the world, COVID plays a factor in it.
Yep.
And I think you've done a phenomenal job with this and with the big bout and with the word balloon and everything else you do. I'm as big a fan of yours as any heavyweight. And I think it would be interesting to go over the betting odds on all those guys step by step and find out who should fight each other. I just think right now that you'll see these guys will shake themselves out.
Yes.
And you only get one or two big fights a year. in the heavyweight division. Just like you only get 1 or 2 Canelo fights a year. It's a cottage industry all its own outside of the sport.
Well, Canelo, wait a minute, man, because truly Canelo has been a very active champion, and he's fighting Caleb Plant next month.
He has to be. There's too much money at stake when he fights. It feeds far too many people, just like Manny. Just like Floyd. They fed far too many people. And I'm not talking about their entourage. I'm talking about, companies,
Sure.
streaming platforms.
Yep.
I'm really surprised DAZN is still the player they are. I really didn't. I didn't see these things becoming that big to the point where ESPN Plus would come in and try and crush everybody. And I didn't see it being so big that ESPN Plus couldn't crush everybody. That all this stuff is still out there. Now you deal with it a lot more in the other podcasts you do, where you talk about streaming platforms a lot.
Yeah.
It's really a nice media revolution. It really makes for a lot of fun stuff, content available on all different levels. And for boxing, for a guy, that makes the joke about watching the fights on Telemundo at 3:00 in the morning, to have something like DAZN where you get to see fights that, there's more fights than you can watch.
Yeah.
It's great.
They had the Liverpool. They had the Liverpool card last week. They've got a card this weekend. Canelo, to finish the thought, in a calendar year will have fought 4 times when he fights Caleb Plant November 6th.
That's 4, huh?
Well, because December 19th of 2020 to November 6th of 2021, 4 times. Yeah. He fought Callum Smith in December, Yildirim in February, Billy Joe Saunders in May, and now Caleb Plant.
Wow.
Yeah. That's really, and let's see, prior to that December fight, then he had a year after. He hadn't fought just over a year from the second Kovalev fight, or rather the only Kovalev fight, to Callum Smith. And again, pandemic. What are you going to do? That was, most of that time was the early months of the pandemic. So yeah, man, no, Canelo's been very, very active, and a guy that I've begrudgingly, because I really felt Gennady Golovkin won both fights, frankly. That hasn't changed my mind. And by the way, there's another guy that everyone is avoiding and wants to have him play shuffleboard with Luis Ortiz in the old man retirement club and everything.
Yeah.
And I hate that. It gets me very angry that Golovkin is being disrespected this way.
It's funny that one of the few things I do agree with somebody, because I actually thought both Canelo Triple G fights were pick'ems either way. I'm not talking about before the fight. I'm talking after. I thought either decision could have gone either way. I'm one of those guys that goes, you know what? It was a really good fight. I didn't see either guy dominate either guy in that fight. So if you're gonna tell me that somebody won 7 rounds to 5 and I got it 8-4 the other way, those were all close rounds. I can't really argue. But having said that, a kid that actually fought for me, that never fought as a pro, probably had 40 or 50 amateur fights, and I never really thought of him as a guy that could pick fights. But he said, "No, I thought Canelo probably won that fight, and I can't remember whether he was talking about the first fight or the second fight, actually. He said, but it wasn't Canelo's fight to win. It was Triple G's fight to lose. Triple G a couple years earlier would have destroyed him. He said Triple G's not the same fighter anymore.
Yes.
Now, Triple G was a monster in both those fights.
Yes.
He looked violent. He was frightening. But he says all those punches that he lands would have landed harder. And he went through 10 different things that he thinks he sees anyway in Triple G that aren't there anymore. And
pardon me.
I get it.
Yeah, I hear you, man. It goes back to what you said before about Wilder and everything. Those wars with Canelo might have taken, and probably did take something from Triple G. Plus, as he ages, middleweights don't age the way heavyweights do.
But again, even before the Canelo fights, the 2 years before he fought Canelo, the aging process up to that point made it harder for him to win those fights. He would have won. He would have beaten Canelo easily.
I hear what you're saying.
Floyd fought him at the right time.
Yep, absolutely.
They said Floyd waited too long. Waited so long to fight guys. Instead, it looks like that. What do you call? Instead, it looks like that he fought Canelo too early.
Well, no, everybody. Honestly, I always felt that Canelo Mayweather fight. I give Canelo's people a lot of credit for taking it when they did, and it was smart because it exposed him to the general public. And it was like when Mancini fought what's his face, the tall thin man, Arguello. Thank you. Yeah, man. I mean, that's what it was. Literally, it really was a blueprint for that. Where it's like, okay, Mayweather's an all-time great already, and this kid is young, but the talent is there, and it's like he's going to be fine. Like, I mean, and again, hats off from learning from that fight and taking the risk in that early part of your career when 9 out of 10 other promoters would have been like, no, we got to protect his undefeated record. It's not going to look good if he gets defeated. Say that now. I mean, Canelo really, he's still pound for pound the best fighter out there. I'm intrigued, by the way, and it's another fight I wanted to talk to you about, that Terrence Crawford is fighting Sean Porter. But I got to tell you, one of the reasons why I picked Ugas over Pacquiao was I thought Ugas got robbed in that Porter fight when they fought. And I like Sean Porter. There's a ton of great welterweights out there. I'm still waiting for Sean Porter to win the big fight, and it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. I like every one of those fighters. That's another division that's just
laden with talent.
I mean, it's frightening. One of the guys that I met in Canastota was Jarrett Hurd.
Oh, wow.
And I liked him. Nice guy. And he hasn't won a fight since. I
hear you. No, I mean, even stupid and he's back in trouble again. Adrian Broner, for God's sake, has talent when he feels like using it.
But Adrian Broner, I mean, he's one of those guys like he just doesn't.
Tony Aiello without the punch.
Yeah, he and not enough punches. He's got so much talent, but nobody wants to see him fight.
And also he can't stay. I don't know how he is in camp. I mean, I see it in the ring in terms of the talent, but like you said, there should be more. He should be throwing more punches. I don't know if he's not in the best condition. I really don't know. I don't know. I'm shrugging. I mean, I was gonna go back to the Pacquiao fight with him. But then again, it's like, no, man, he was still showing that he still got it.
Yeah, I mean, Manny's a little guy that was so damn good that he could compete at that weight. And finally, it took somebody like Ugas to say, "Okay, Manny, that's enough."
Yeah.
You're still that damn good, but not tonight.
Well, and also, I mean, I felt like when he lost to the Australian Jeff, and I can't think of his last name.
Horn, wasn't it?
Jeff Horn. That's right. Thank you, buddy. I thought that was a job. I think one of the losses to Tim Bradley, I can't believe what the ref saw. That made no sense to me. He had a couple losses post Mayweather that I'm like, I don't buy any of these losses and stuff. But man, when he beat Keith Thurman, it was amazing. And it was satisfying that he beat Adrian Broner. Ugas too tall, fast hands, master boxer, great counterpuncher. Again, used his size. And Keith Thurman and Pacquiao were about the same size, and Broner and Pacquiao were about the same size. And God bless Manny. I mean, good luck to start as a junior flyweight in your career, and end your career and 40 pounds heavier. God bless him, man. And still more than effective, dominant, and world beating. I mean, it's good that he retired. And I wish him luck in his presidential run, because they have a terrible president right now. And
they should put his picture on money and make him king.
I still want it to be a presidency, but no, he loves his country and he clearly wants to help his country get better. And he's a champion.
He
Pretty
is.
amazing.
I mean, he. I know people. My Filipino friends aren't even necessarily boxing friends, and he's Michael Jordan.
Sure.
They
yes.
And not necessarily just because of boxing. It's because of who he is.
A lot of humanitarian stuff. Yeah.
He's got that same aura about him that Ali had. It's not just the fact that he's an athlete. He's transformative around people.
Yes.
People gravitate toward him.
Yes.
I never saw anybody act the way I saw people act around Muhammad Ali.
Agreed.
But in regards to the welterweights, there's so many good ones out there. I like Porter. I like Porter a lot, and I think maybe this is the one. I think maybe this is his coming out party against Crawford.
Wow. You really think he's got the ability to beat Crawford? You don't think Crawford's faster or stronger?
Yes, he's both of those. He's too fast, he's too strong. But he's that's what makes it such a good fight. I mean, I've promoted fights now. The first fight I promoted on my own was in 1989. And for 4 or 5 years before that, I co-promoted fights since I was too young. We were fortunate enough; we got to work with Cedric Kushner when he came to Chicago.
Yep.
And we used his license before I got my own.
Sure.
Where we could just run shows.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make any difference after that many years when you tell me, it's Fury Wilder or it's Crawford Porter. I'm in. I'm like a kid. I want to get on a plane and go. I want to sit down with a bowl of popcorn. I want to call my friends up and get the pay-per-view. I think I do think I can argue it either way, but I'm a Porter fan, so I'm gonna take Porter in that one.
Well, we'll
But
find
you're
out in a
right.
couple weeks.
Crawford's quick, and it's a shame. It's a shame he's so damn strong because he's so damn quick. He's got both of them. I think all those guys can fight each other, and I don't think any of them is a strong favorite against the other one. If we go back to our gambling podcast, I think all of them are. Yeah, you could say this guy's a favorite over that guy, but you better not say by much.
Well, another guy will stick his head out, and we'll see how he does this weekend when Mikey Garcia fights Sandor Martin.
Yeah. Now, there's a guy, Martin, I don't know as well. So that'll make me watch him.
Yeah, I think Mikey Garcia. I don't know. I don't know if this is just an easy fight after the Vargas fight. A year and a half ago, it was February of 2020 was the last time that Mikey fought. So that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, he didn't think anybody could beat him, did he? Garcia was firmly convinced he could conquer the entire world. But I think at the end of the day, all those guys. I wish maybe the sport was a little more popular, so we'd see some of these fights more often. These guys make so much money that it takes that long to put the fights together. But and depending on how you got to pay for it, although it seems like all the venues are back at full capacity now. We'll have to see. We'll have to see who fights who.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and again, at the bottom of the heavyweight division, with Dylan White and Otto Wallin fighting, and Joe Parker and Chirosora fighting again, and also we had the Ortiz Areola fight. So I think the bottom end of the division is working itself out as fighters jockey for position and everything. But I do think there are entertaining cards really through the end of the year. Certainly this month and next month are very heavily laden, and there are December fights as well that are going to be significant. Before we wrap up, a thought on a loss that we had. Tony Demarco, the great welterweight, passed this week at the age of 89.
Because we're from Chicago and we have the Italian American Sports Hall of Fame here in Chicago. It started out as the Italian American Boxers Hall of Fame.
Yep.
The first 2 years they did an unbelievable banquet where they brought in fighters. I don't know how many. When I say I don't know how many, I mean, it wasn't a dozen. It was 50. And being an Italian American in the boxing business, my dad and my grandfather had told me stories about every one of these guys. And then they went to this banquet and they got to hang with all these guys. And I mean, this is when I'm a teenager. And my dad came home with a book with every autograph. And my dad didn't care about autographs. I have a full line of sports memorabilia I sell. But my dad wouldn't ask anybody for an autograph on a bet. So he got everybody's autograph for him. and I remember him talking about Tony Demarco being there. My grandfather going, "Oh my God, could he fight?" So when I went to Canastota and Carmen Basilio introduced me to Tony DeMarco. And it's funny because it's gone now, but there was a bar in Canastota called Graziano's. And all the fighters would go there. If you went for induction weekend at the Boxing Hall of Fame, you got to meet every old time fighter. So actually, I don't know if Carmen introduced me to DeMarco or not. I met Carmen, and I had met him before. And I saw Tony DeMarco, and I asked him a question about being in Chicago. And I got him to sign a boxing glove for me. And I told him how much my dad and my grandfather loved him at the event I just told you about. 2 nights later at the dinner, Carmen Basilio, Gene Fulmer, and Tony DeMarco all got up and everybody got up at a dinner and gave their own little speech. And all these guys got a speech that they give at a dinner or an awards ceremony. And it's the same speech. They've been doing it for years.
Sure.
And DeMarco got up like he was like he was I don't know, like he was Robert De Niro in Raging Bull doing Jake LaMotta. He got up and he did like a 5-minute comedy thing.
Sure.
Talking about fighters, and we don't know. We think we're funny guys, but we're not that funny. He says, we just been hit in the head so many times that we think we're funny.
Yeah.
and he had people eating out of the palm of his hand. And then I said, geez, who would want to follow him? And Gene Fulmer and Carmen Basilio get up, and Gene Fulmer has a great story that I know you've heard about being amazed what great shape Sugar Ray Robinson's in because he's dancing in his corner after he knocked him out.
Yep.
And I've heard him tell that story 3 times in person. But here he told a story about him and Carmen Basilio beating each other up so bad that they stopped the fight and they're walking out of the ring. And Gene's mother ran up to Carmen and said, "Oh my God, Gene, what did he do to you?" He says, "Even my own mother couldn't recognize me. She thought I was Carmen Basilio."
Wow.
And the whole time I'm listening to this story, Tony DeMarco's laughing because he had heard the story already.
Sure.
So he knew the story, and he's laughing before the punchline. And that's the way these guys were together.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Isn't that great, though, that they don't fight each other? Certainly in the case of Basilio fighting both of these guys. And the amount of sportsmanship, and again, boy, not to bring it back to last Saturday, but I'm still, one of the reasons why I didn't want to give Wilder credit was he didn't even have the courtesy and the medal and honor within himself to know, okay, this guy beat me tonight. I can shake his hand and say, good fight. You were he did finally release a statement saying that obviously Tyson was the better man that night. But even in his statement, you could tell he didn't want to give him the credit and stuff. But I love that back to what we're talking about, how the respect and genuine love that these guys ended up having for each other after beating the crap out of each other in several wars.
You know, your guy, Stud Sturkle,
yes,
said something about Babe Ruth. He said, there's the story. There's stories about Babe Ruth. He says, and guys say they're true or they're not true. He says some of the stories they tell about Babe Ruth that are the truth are more unbelievable than the lies. He said, so you just tell the story. It doesn't make any difference.
Sure.
And those guys, they're just, it's just unbelievable. I love this stuff. And like I said, I collect memorabilia. I sell sports memorabilia. I do it because I love it. It just
Sure.
you get to spend a minute with one of these guys and stuff. And I was at that same bar, at the same restaurant, at the bar in Canastota, right after hanging with Bert Sugar for a couple of drinks, and I'm talking to Alexis Arguello, who was a television commentator. And to bring it full circle, Alexis Arguello was the television commentator on a show I promoted on Mexican television. So I'm talking to him about that, and Aaron Pryor walks up.
Wow.
And I turn and I look, and I'm looking at these two guys who are standing on both sides of me, and I act like a referee, and I hold them apart. And I say, "You two guys get along now, right?" And they both laughed, and they hugged each other. And all of a sudden, I was an afterthought in the conversation.
I'm sure.
but I said, "That's unbelievable." I said, "You see these two guys? Just to see those two guys together." But yeah, they sat down and talked for half an hour.
That's awesome. To wrap up about Demarco, I want to read you this stretch of fights he had and who he fought. And I mean, these are names right away where you're just like, oh yeah, of course. I mean,
do you know what year it was?
I'm sorry?
Do you know what year it was?
Oh, I've got his record and the year and the fighter. So in February of 55, that's his first big name fight, and he fights Jimmy Carter and gets a draw with Jimmy Carter. Then he fights Johnny Saxton in April of 55, 2 months later, and he wins. Then he fights Basilio and loses in June of 55. Then in September of 55, he beats Chico Vejar. Then in November of 55, we're still in 55, he fights Basilio again and loses in the 12th. It's the fight of the year. And then he takes a few months off and comes back in March of 56 and fights Wallace Bud Smith. I mean, this is, so that's just 55 to early 56. He retires Kid Gavilan later that year in October and has two other fights in between with Arthur Persley and Vince Martinez. Then he fights Gaspar Ortega and loses in November. Fights in October, retires Kid Gavilan, loses to Gaspar Ortega twice in November, and then a month later they fight again, and he loses again, and then he finally beats Ortega. They fought 3 times: November of 56, December of 56, and February of 57. And finally, in the third fight, he wins a unanimous decision against Gaspar Ortega.
They probably fought each other that many times in a row because there were guys that fought Gaspar Ortega that never wanted to fight again.
Sure. That's what I'm saying. Look at, this level of competition. And then, 57, he loses to Virgil Akins, then loses to him twice, October of 57 and then January of 58. He fought till 62. I mean, just an incredible career that started in 1948 and ended in 62. 58 wins, 12 losses, 33 knockouts, 7 losses by knockout, 1 draw. Yeah.
I'm
Tony DeMarco, everybody, 89.
I'm not the best historian out there. I know him because that hits me very close to home. But for anybody that listens to your stuff that only knows the current stuff, reading a record like that, you can turn around and look at each one of those other fighters and just get a wealth of information about what it's like to know more about great fighters from then that are just like the fighters that we've been talking about. They're the cream of the crop at a point in time. But here we are, geez, 65 years later, talking about this guy's fights over a 6-month period.
Yeah,
because they're that good.
they're that
And
good,
that-
and also, the paydays weren't big, and they had to fight every couple of months to earn a living.
I mean, today, Gasper Ortega couldn't get a fight a year because nobody'd fight him, and he'd be making as much money as anybody out there. Demarco, boy, that would be insane. That would be to see him fight now. That would be he'd sell out. He'd be at the stadium at Arlington. He'd be a big outdoor stadium fighter.
Oh yeah, he'd be Kaunaki, the Kaunaki of Boston.
Yeah,
really he was, but even more accomplished, obviously. And again, in a very competitive era. No, I'm so with you, man. And honestly, I want my show to lean towards boxing history as much as talking about big current fights, because I can't help it. I having grown up when we did, and the access we had to fight films, and now they're all on YouTube. All the classics are on YouTube, and all the contender versus contender. You can find a lot of these fights, these Demarco fights, on YouTube, and that's great, because really appreciate. When everything was shut down because of COVID, I retreated to YouTube and watched 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s contender fights.
You could do it all day long, yeah.
I mean, literally this weekend, I was just rewatching Mike Rossman against Dwight Braxton, and it was a CBS broadcast from like 1980.
Well, Rossman, we had tentatively scheduled a Mike Rossman, Craig Bojanowski fight that was going to be on CBS. And that's when Craig Bojanowski got into a motorcycle accident and lost his leg.
Wow.
My dad had put together that deal with a friend of Cedric Kushner's, the guy that ran sports at CBS, Mort.
Oh, Mort Sharnick.
Mort Sharnick. I was going to say Shanker. It's Sharnick. Yeah, Mort was a genius.
Yes, great
and
television boxing producer. Absolutely.
And one of Bert's guys too.
Yep.
He loved Bert. I remember I got to meet him once briefly, and it was I knew I was meeting a real sharp guy, and I just said hello and watched him.
Sure.
that was part of my education, was getting to see guys like that. But yeah, all those old fights. I used to love. Actually, it started with how old am I? It started with Photomat. Photomat sold videotapes of old boxing.
Sure.
And it was 4 Sugar Ray Robinson fights. And you could never see those. They used to be on 8mm. They had converted them to beta and VHS. And I got to watch those. Well, when I met Mike Tyson, when he came here to do an exhibition, I said something to him about I had just watched a Kid Gavilan fight that he was talking about. And he said, "Oh, did you ever see this fight?" I said, No, I don't have that fight. And his manager, was Bill Caton and Jim Jacobs,
right,
owned all the fights.
Yeah,
they owned the rights to all those old fights. So he had seen every fight that I hadn't seen. And I said, "No, I don't get those." And he said, "Yeah, I watch those all the time." And he started I sat with him for 20 minutes talking to him about old time fights.
I bet.
Before a press conference one day, and I was going nuts about it. But he was happy because I knew a little bit about it, so I could talk to him about it. He had somebody to talk to about what he liked.
Oh, I'm with you. Absolutely.
Now, or actually even 10 years later, all those fights were on ESPN Classic.
Right.
But at the time, you had to fight. You had to work hard to try and find a fight film.
Oh, no, absolutely, man. You're 100% right. And thank God Caton licensed a lot of his collection to ESPN Classic. And we've got all these great fights that people have tapewormed and thrown up on YouTube. I'm actually surprised that Caton's estate doesn't try and yank those down.
I think the estate sold them to ESPN.
Oh, well, that would have made sense too.
I think so. I think when ESPN Classic came along, that's why all of a sudden you saw those things. That was 20 hours a day on ESPN Classic.
Sure. I wonder what happened to the radio collection that Caton had.
I don't know.
Because
that was all
I see CDs and digital selling of a lot of the classic radio calls. Not only going back to the 30s, but tons of them from the 50s and 60s too, into the 70s and 80s. So and again, they all seem to be Caton products. So
those guys were fantastic. They were great archivists.
Yeah,
of some unbelievable stuff.
Yeah, thankfully, absolutely, man. You know what's crazy? All right, here's a guy like Tony Demarco, who here's 6 degrees of separation from Tony Demarco. He fights Denny Moyer, and Denny Moyer fought both Sugar Ray Robinson and Vito Antuofermo, along with Tony Demarco.
Wow,
that's how long Denny Moyer's career was.
Yeah, well, there were plenty of guys like that. I mean, you mentioned. I mean, that's the thing. I'm lucky enough. Okay, all the guys we're talking about are all famous, very popular boxers. Me, I'm a guy that promoted fights in Chicago for a while, but I got to be around everybody. And my one friend says, "You met him? You know him?" I don't know him. I met him. I saw him.
Sure.
I watched a fight of him. Whatever. I got to meet Kid Gavlin.
Wow.
And he sat and talked to me. And it was this, and it didn't. I 20 minutes before I met Kid Gavlin, I was talking to Vito Antuofermo about watching him fight here
against Hagler. No,
who did
he fight here again?
He fought a guy named Mauricio Aldana.
Okay. I got him mixed up with Hampshire fighting Hagler in Rosemont.
No, this was a small show. On the same show, Ray Mancini fights a tune-up fight or a undercard fight, and comes in with a boom box on his shoulder to boom boom out go the lights. The guy that Antuofermo fought cut Antuofermo in each of the first 4 rounds. Above the right eye, below the right eye, above the left eye, below the left eye. And Antuofermo bleeds all over the place and still wins a decision. And when I go to tell Antuofermo this, Antuofermo tells me, and I don't know that this is true, but I'm going to tell it anyway because the legend is as good as the truth.
Sure.
He told me that Mauricio Aldana, Antuofermo was sitting at home one day, and Mauricio Aldana's picture came on the TV on America's Most Wanted.
Wow.
Several years after they had fought. And he said, "I fought that guy." And then they went into the fact that he had been a boxer and apparently killed somebody.
Well, that's not uncommon. My buddy Don Stradley, a fine writer, has a book.
Great guy. Wow, I love the stuff you do with him.
You know, John?
I'm a fan of his because of you.
Yeah, he's a great writer, and he's a good talker. Yeah. He's got a great book out about a lot of 4, 6, and 8 round fighters from Boston who really were like low level mob guys, and the amount of killing and violent crime that they were all involved in. It's a wonderful book. Wonderful sounds terrible to say it that way, but it is. It's a compelling book about a lot of the undercard fighters of Boston through the decades and some of the terrible things that happened to them. It's pretty amazing.
We could do this. We could do this every week, just telling stories about stories we've heard from guys.
Oh yeah,
it would be a hearsay boxing podcast.
That's true.
But it would still be.
We would call that episode. Well, that's what he said.
That's what he said, and I mean, I remember commenting, watching one of your ringside seat roundtables, telling Nigel that I met him through my friend Carmen Graziano.
Oh, cool.
And Carmen had 2 fighters out of Philly named Pat Coelho and Tony Suero. And they had a story. Both of them had been in jail and out and fought and back in jail. Pat Coelho changed his name to Vic Valentino because he was wanted under the name Pat Coelho.
Sure.
And got into a fight on the boardwalk the night before he was supposed to fight and cut his hand open on a guy's mouth.
Oh, boy.
So he wrapped his own hands before he got to the dressing room.
Jeez.
And they put the gloves on him. And he got in the ring and he boxed and he hit the guy with a right hand. And all of a sudden, there was blood all over the guy's face. The guy went back to the corner. He wasn't cut. Comes out the next round. He hits him again. And there's blood all over the place. 2, 3 rounds in a row, this happens. Finally, Carmen sees that the kid's glove is soaked with blood. It's his hand that opened up again. And they had to stop the fight because the kid's whole glove was soaked with blood.
Wow.
He said, and that's not the worst story I could tell you about this kid. He told me.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
So, yeah, there's never a dull moment in the world of boxing.
Here.
I want to do something with you where we get all your famous author friends, especially because I love boxing biographies, to do some kind of a book signing.
Oh, wow. That'd be fun.
We'll do something. We'll do something fun, and
we should figure that out. Actually, that's a great idea, Don.
We'll take it in on your page, and we'll sell them. We'll sell them on the Big Bout podcast.
I love that idea. I think that's a great idea. We should almost find a great Chicago fight like Dempsey Tunney or something like that, and plan for it like as an anniversary thing. To have these guys together in a round table and selling their books and stuff. No, you're right, because certainly Don can do that. I'm the next time Don will come on, we'll be talking about his Hagler Hearns book, and I think good timing to compare that war against to the Wilder Fury 3. But also, Bill Detloff has a Matthew Saad Muhammad biography coming out soon, and and also their publishers have several other great boxing biographies and various books about boxing and stuff. So no, I think that's an interesting idea. That's something we should pursue.
Do you know anything about the great, just a great columnist, but he did several great boxing stories. Jim Murray.
Oh, I love Jim Murray. Great writer. Great writer.
Do you?
Man. I mean, I've followed all the great writers. Liebling and Hines, and even modern guys that thankfully are still around, like Lipsyte and Remick, and but no, the classic guys that were on the beat, and Jim was one of them and stuff. No, I have tremendous respect. I keep threatening, and I should do it for my research purposes, to get a newspapers.com account to read not only those guys, but some of the other classic guys that were around during the IBC years. And like Dan Turner is another great example like that.
I bet you those articles were great.
Yeah. And the Liebling books, my God, I mean, such amazing things. I'm glad that I got to know Bud Schulberg in his later years before he passed. Another tremendous writer.
I envy you that greatly.
Well, hey man, you got guys on your list, so let's wrap up, Don, because this was great, and we could save it for future conversations when we have other new fights to talk about. But we'll each other's brains.
Want to, my friend. The only thing, if I'm wrapping up, I'm gonna go out of my way here to tell you how, and we're friends, but I cannot say how much I admire you and the work you do. Everything about what you do on your podcasts is just, it's sterling work. It's a yeoman's chore, and it's sterling work. Stuff I like everything you talk about, but it's not in my wheelhouse, not in my day-to-day. And you've got me watching television shows and reading comic books and looking stuff up because you make it fascinating for me, and not just entertaining, but compelling. And it's really, really something special what you're doing.
Oh, that's really nice, man. Thank you. That's very kind. I appreciate that.
Good to say it.
I want to get good guests on and make it entertaining, and you've been that for this couple hours. So thank you, Don Lenza. As always, I always enjoy our conversations, and we'll talk soon.